Before we get started, hit the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Whether you're catching sunrise in Nairobi, burning midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to hear from you. Don't just watch silently, let me know where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The kidnappers thought she was finished. They thought the woman they dragged across the dirt floor, hands zip-tied, hair covering half her face, was just another helpless mother snatched from a quiet life. But the moment they threw her into the dim concrete room, something in the air shifted. Not enough for them to notice, but enough for her 9-year-old son, Elias, hiding behind a rusted water tank, to feel a familiar spark of hope. He knew that look in her eyes. It meant danger wasn't coming. It was already here. Her name was Mira Halden, a soft-spoken woman in a dark green sweater, jeans streaked with dust, and a thin silver chain around her neck. The kidnappers laughed as they shoved her against a metal pole and tied her to it. One of them, a tall man with a scar like a white slash across his forehead, leaned close enough for her to smell his cigarette breath. "We know who you are," he said. "A nobody with a kid and a quiet job. Someone easy to break." Mira didn't correct him. That was the first mistake they made. Outside, thunder rolled across the abandoned lumber yard. The broken windows rattled, letting in cold wind and the distant smell of rain. The single bulb in the room flickered, throwing the kidnappers' shadows across the walls, long jagged shapes that made Elias shrink deeper into his hiding spot. He pressed a hand over his mouth to stay silent, but tears slipped down his cheeks anyway. One of the men kicked Mira's shoulder, annoyed she wasn't crying or begging. "Say something," he demanded. "Don't act brave. You're not built for this." She lifted her face slowly, her expression unreadable. "If you touch my son," she whispered, "you won't leave this place alive." They burst out laughing, their voices echoing off the hollow walls. Then came the moment everything cracked. The man with the scar pulled out Mira's phone, the one she thought she had hidden well. He turned the screen so she could see it. "We saw the messages," he said smugly. "Calling someone for help? Cute. But nobody's coming." He tossed the phone to the floor and stomped on it. Plastic shattered. Glass scattered. But he didn't know what button she had pressed before they grabbed her. He didn't know the message wasn't sent to a friend or a neighbor or even the police. It went somewhere far more dangerous. Elias saw his mother's jaw tighten, not in fear but in calculation. Memories flickered behind her eyes, quick and sharp, and her fingers subtly tapped an invisible rhythm against the rope behind her back. A code. A signal. A countdown. The scarred man fired a warning shot into the ceiling, dust raining down. "Nobody knows you're missing," he said. Mira finally looked up at him, calm as winter steel. "That's where you're wrong," she murmured. "Delta Force knows." And outside, faint but growing, a helicopter approached. 3 days before the kidnapping, Mira Halden stood in the kitchen of her small mountain home, slicing apples for Elias's lunch. Morning sunlight spilled across the wooden counter, soft and golden, catching the tiny flecks of dust swirling lazily in the air. It was the kind of peaceful morning people prayed for. The kind of morning that pretended danger didn't exist. Mira wore a faded gray hoodie, her hair tied back messily, moving like any ordinary mother getting her child ready for school. Yet beneath the calm rhythm of her hands, something restless stirred, something she had hoped would never return. Elias ran into the kitchen, backpack bouncing, eyes bright. "Mom, Coach says if I hit 3 clean passes today, I can start in Saturday's game." Mira smiled, brushing his cheek with her thumb. "You'll do more than 3, she said. "You always surprise them." But as she watched him tie his shoes, she noticed the shadow under his right eye, a tiredness no child should carry. For weeks, he'd been waking up in the night, whispering that he sensed someone watching their house. Mira dismissed it at first, until the strange footprints appeared near the back fence. Too large to be hikers. Too clean to be animals. That morning, Elias paused at the door, noticing the tension in her shoulders. "Mom, are we safe?" he asked quietly. Mira hesitated. For 10 years she'd buried her past, leaving behind the uniform, the missions, the calls that came at midnight. She'd promised herself she would never pull her son into that world. But as she looked at him now, the boy who carried her entire heart, she felt a cold certainty settle in her bones. "Always," she answered, hugging him. But her eyes drifted to the tree line beyond their driveway, scanning the shadows. Watching the stillness. After the bus drove off, Mira walked back inside and locked the door. Then she opened a wooden box she had kept hidden beneath the floorboards. Inside was a black tactical watch, a thin encrypted phone, and a folded patch she thought she'd never see again. Delta Force. Ghost Division. The most secret unit no one admitted existed. She hadn't touched these items since the day she disappeared from the military world without saying goodbye. Not even her closest teammates knew where she had gone. She powered the encrypted phone on. No messages. No alerts. Just silence. But her instincts whispered that the silence wasn't peace, it was the quiet before a storm. That evening, as she poured tea and waited for Elias to finish his homework, a black SUV rolled slowly past their driveway. Too slowly. Mira's breath caught. The SUV didn't stop, but the tinted window lowered just enough for her to see a pair of eyes, familiar, cold, and full of unfinished business. The past hadn't forgotten her, and it was coming back with precision. The next morning, Mira kept Elias home from school. She didn't tell him why, only said they needed a quiet day. But every move she made was deliberate, checking locks, watching angles, scanning windows with habits born from a life she never wanted him to know. Elias noticed the shift instantly. "Mom?" he whispered while drawing at the kitchen table. "You're doing the soldier walk again." Mira froze. She had tried so hard to bury that part of herself. She forced a smile, kissed the top of his head and said, "Just tired, baby?" But outside, two men were already watching them from the trees. They stood still between the pines, too still for hikers, dressed in dark clothing, their posture controlled. One of them lifted binoculars slowly, almost reverently, like he'd waited 10 years for this moment. The other whispered something into a handheld radio. Even from inside, Mira felt the wrongness in the air. The forest wasn't breathing normally. It felt like a hunted thing holding its breath. When Elias went to his room, Mira stepped onto the back porch, mug in hand, pretending to admire the sky. Her eyes swept the ridgeline. There, a glint. A reflection. Binocular lenses catching sunlight. She didn't flinch. Instead, she sipped her tea as if she hadn't seen anything at all. But inside, her heartbeat hammered. Whoever they were, they weren't amateurs. They knew not to move fast. They knew how to stalk quietly. They knew that patience was a weapon. And that meant they knew her. Her encrypted phone buzzed suddenly, one single vibration. No number, no text. Just a location ping. Coordinates. Mira's blood chilled. Someone from her old world had sent it. A warning. Or a summons. She checked the location. A spot 4 miles away near Deadwater Bridge, abandoned years ago. She didn't know who sent it, but the timing was too perfect to ignore. She locked the doors, lowered the blinds, and moved to Elias's room. "We're going to Grandma's for the night," she said gently. Elias blinked. "But Grandma lives 2 hours away." Mira nodded. "Exactly why it'll be fun." But before they could leave, she sensed movement, a ripple of shadows crossing the backyard. They had moved closer. Too close. She grabbed Elias's hand and guided him quietly to the basement. "Play the silent game," she whispered, forcing calm into her voice. "Can you do that?" Elias nodded, though his lip trembled. She hugged him, pressing her cheek to his hair. "You're safe with me." But she wasn't sure that was true anymore. Above them, floorboards creaked. A door latch clicked. Someone was testing the handle. Mira's pulse steadied, turning cold and razor-sharp. She slipped the tactical watch onto her wrist and pressed a hidden button on its side. A beacon activated. A message went out. Not to police. Not to neighbors. But to the one group she prayed she'd never need again. Delta Force. And the woods outside shifted, as if the hunters realized their prey wasn't prey at all. By late afternoon, the forest had gone eerily quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the heavy kind that sits on your shoulders like a warning. Mira slipped Elias into the back seat of their old blue SUV, buckled him in and whispered, "No sounds okay?" "Not even a little one." His wide eyes stared back at her, trusting her completely. That trust cut deeper than any blade. She shut the door gently, scanning the tree line one last time before sliding into the driver's seat. The moment the engine rumbled, 3 birds burst from a nearby pine, startled. A signal. Someone had moved. Mira didn't hesitate. She sped down the dirt road, tires kicking up gravel. Elias clutched his backpack tightly, peeking out the back window. "Mom, someone's following us," he whispered. Mira didn't have to look, she already knew. The black SUV she'd seen days earlier appeared on the ridge, pacing them, keeping distance, never pushing too close. Professionals. They wanted her to lead them somewhere. She intended to, just not where they expected. She turned sharply onto an old logging route, branches scraping the doors. "Are we going to Grandma's?" Elias asked. Mira forced calm into her voice. "We're taking the safer way." But her thoughts were racing. The coordinates on her encrypted phone. Deadwater Bridge. Someone from her past wanted her there. Someone who knew she was being hunted. Someone she once trusted, or once feared. The bridge came into view, an old steel structure stretched across a narrow gorge, covered in rust and memories. Mira parked the SUV beneath the shadow of the trees. "Stay here," she told Elias, cupping his cheeks. "If you hear anything, you lie down and don't move." His voice cracked. "Mom? I don't want you to go." She kissed his forehead. "I'll come back. I always come back." She stepped onto the bridge slowly, boots echoing against the metal grates. Wind hissed through the girders. Her breath fogged in the cold air. Halfway across she stopped. "I'm here," she said quietly, her voice carried by the breeze. "Show yourself." A figure emerged from the far side, stepping from behind a support beam. Tall, lean, wearing a dark tactical jacket. Mira's stomach tightened. It was Cade Rennick, her former commander, the man she once trusted with her life. His presence hit her like a punch. "You vanished," he said, voice low. "No trace. No goodbye." She held her ground. "I had a son to protect." Cade's cold blue eyes didn't blink. "And now they found you." "Who are they?" Mira demanded. Cade stepped closer. "A rogue paramilitary group. Ex-Intel operatives. They want the asset you took from them 10 years ago." Mira froze. "I took nothing." Cade's jaw tightened. "Then why did they send this?" He tossed a small metal case at her feet. Inside was a photograph, grainy but unmistakable. A picture of Elias. A red circle drawn around his face. Mira's breath shattered. And at that exact moment, engines roared in the distance. Multiple. Fast thought they'd been followed. Engines roared louder, bouncing off the steel ribs of the bridge like thunder trapped inside a metal cage. Mira spun toward the tree line as 3 black trucks burst through the brush, tires throwing mud like exploding earth. Cade stepped instinctively in front of her, hand drifting toward the sidearm concealed beneath his jacket. "They tracked your vehicle," he muttered. "They were always a step ahead." Mira's pulse spiked. If they found the bridge, they found the SUV. And if they found the SUV, Elias was exposed. She bolted toward the end of the bridge, ignoring Cade's shout behind her. Wind whipped her hair into her face as she sprinted. Through the trees, she saw her son in the car, tiny hands pressed against the window, fear widening his eyes. A man in a black mask was already approaching the SUV, moving low and fast like he'd rehearsed this moment 100 times. Mira's scream ripped from her throat. "Don't touch him." The masked man didn't hesitate. He smashed the driver's side window with the butt of his rifle. Elias cried out, shrinking into the seat. Mira leapt off the final steps of the bridge, landing hard on the dirt, pain shooting up her leg, but she never slowed. She grabbed the nearest rock and hurled it with precision born from muscle memory. It cracked against the man's temple, staggering him. She lunged, ramming her shoulder into him. They crashed onto the forest floor, rolling through leaves and dirt. The man recovered quickly, swinging his rifle toward her, but Mira twisted, slammed her knee into his ribs and ripped the weapon from his grasp. 2 more men rushed from the trees. She fired a warning burst into the ground, forcing them back. Behind her, Elias whimpered, "Mom." The truck screeched to a stop, doors flying open, men pouring out like a coordinated swarm. Mira grabbed Elias with one arm and hauled him out of the SUV. She needed to run. Needed to disappear into the woods. But before she could move, Cade appeared beside her, firing precise shots that forced the attackers into cover. "You can't outrun them," he barked. "They're not here to chase, they're here to take." "Then we don't let them," Mira snapped, pulling Elias behind the tire for cover. "Why him, Cade? Why my son?" Cade knelt beside her, reloading calmly. "Because they believe he's the leverage they were denied 10 years ago. You left them empty-handed. They want payment." Mira felt sick. "I didn't take anything." Cade's jaw flexed. "Maybe you didn't. But someone framed you. Someone inside the operation." A bullet pinged off the truck beside them. Another lodged in the dirt near Mira's knee. The men were advancing. Elias clung to his mother's arm, whispering, "Please don't let them take me." Mira kissed his forehead, shielding him with her body. "No one touches you," she vowed. Cade grabbed Mira's wrist. "We need to move. Now." But before they could run, a smoke grenade landed at their feet. And everything vanished in blinding white. The smoke swallowed everything, trees, trucks, even the sky, turning the world into a suffocating white maze. Mira clutched Elias against her chest, coughing hard, vision stinging. She tried to push through the cloud, but silhouettes moved faster than she could react. Shadows with hands, boots, and practiced precision. One grabbed her arm. She twisted free, striking blindly. Another lunged from behind. She elbowed him in the throat. But there were too many. Their plan was simple: overwhelm, separate, vanish. A gloved hand yanked Elias from her grasp. His scream tore through the smoke. Amoam. Mira lunged in the direction of his voice, but two men slammed into her, pinning her to the dirt. She kicked, twisted, fought like an animal, but a third attacker jammed a stun baton into her ribs. Electricity surged through her body. Her muscles seized, her vision flickered. She still tried to crawl, fingers clawing at the ground, but the world spun violently. Somewhere through the haze she heard Elias sobbing. "Mom, please, Mom." Then a bag went over her head. And everything went black. When the world returned, sound arrived first. An engine rumbling beneath her, metal rattling, men arguing in low voices. Her wrists burned from zip ties. Her head throbbed. Her mouth tasted like dust and fear. She forced herself to stay still, listening. Counting breaths. Counting voices. 5 men. 1 driver. No sound of a child. Her heart cracked open. "Elias," she whispered inside the darkness of the hood. The truck jolted violently, turning off-road, bouncing over uneven ground. Every movement made the zip ties tighten until they cut into her skin. She tested the floor with her heel. Metal plates. Reinforced. This wasn't a random kidnapping truck. This was a transport rig. Planned. Funded. Professional. One of the men snorted. "Can't believe this is the woman they warned us about." She fought like a cornered fox, but still just a mom. Another grunted. "A mom who used to run Black Ops for Delta Force. Don't underestimate her." Silence. Heavy. Loaded. Mira kept her breathing steady, but inside, grief and fury twisted together. They had Elias. They had her son. She replayed the moment he was torn from her arms, every scream echoing in her ears. She wanted to break through the steel walls. Wanted to tear the truck apart with her bare hands. But she couldn't afford panic. Not when his life depended on her next move. Minutes passed. Or hours. Time felt like a wound that wouldn't close. Finally the truck stopped. Doors groaned open. Rough hands dragged her out, boots crunching on gravel. Cold night air hit her skin. The hood was ripped off. Mira blinked hard, vision clearing into painful focus. She was in an abandoned lumber yard. Rusted equipment, towering stacks of wood, a warehouse with broken windows glowing from inside. A man stepped forward, mask off, revealing a scar slicing across his forehead. He smiled coldly. "Welcome back, Captain Halden. And don't worry, your son is safe. For now." Mira stood trembling, not from fear. Fear was familiar, but from the cold fury building beneath her ribs. The scarred man paced in front of her, his boots crunching over gravel like slow, deliberate threats. 2 guards flanked her, rifles slung casually as if she were already defeated. She forced her breathing to steady. She needed clarity. Focus. Anything that might lead her back to Elias. The scarred man folded his arms. "You disappeared a decade ago. Thought you could outrun what you stole." Mira met his gaze with steel. "I stole nothing." His smile twitched. "Then someone made sure the blame fell on you." She frowned. "Who?" But he only shrugged. "You'll see soon enough." He signaled to the guards. They shoved her toward the warehouse. Light spilled from inside, harsh, yellow, trembling like the flicker of old generators. As she stepped through the doorway, her heart lurched. A monitor sat on a table, static buzzing softly. When the image finally sharpened, Mira felt her knees weaken. Elias that he sat on a steel chair in a small room, alive, not injured but terrified. His arms were bound loosely, not painfully but enough to keep him in place. He looked around anxiously, calling for her. Mira tried to step toward the screen, but a guard stopped her. "Let him go," she breathed. "He's a child." The scarred man raised a brow. "Exactly why you'll cooperate." Mira clenched her jaw. "What do you want?" He reached into his coat and pulled out a tablet, sliding it across the table. A single file glowed on the screen. "Project HOW, sir," he said. "You were the last operative assigned to it. And when it went missing, so did you." Mira stared blankly. Hollowstar was a myth. Smoke. Rumors. The man's smile widened. "So you say." He tapped the screen. Blueprints appeared, classified, intricate, dangerous. "We know it existed. And someone made sure the world believed you took it." Her chest tightened. "This makes no sense. I left because my son." She stopped herself. The scarred man chuckled. Yes, I know why you left. You were pregnant. You vanished. And someone ensured that your disappearance looked like theft. He leaned close, voice low. You weren't betrayed by us, Captain Halden. He gestured to the shadows behind her. You were betrayed by one of your own. Footsteps echoed across the warehouse. Slow. Familiar. Mira's blood turned to ice. Cade stepped into the light. Her former commander. The man who warned her at the bridge. The man she trusted with her life. Cade. Her voice cracked. You're with him? But something in his eyes wasn't cruel, it was worse. It was resigned. I tried to protect you, he said quietly. But the lie grew too big. And now they want the truth. All of it. Mira's pulse thundered. And you think I have it? He looked away, jaw tight. No. I think Elias does. The room spun. And the world Mira thought she understood shattered in one heartbeat. Mira stared at Cade as if the ground beneath her had tilted. The warehouse lights hummed overhead, flickering like they couldn't bear the tension either. My son, she whispered, voice trembling with rage and disbelief. He's 9 years old, Cade. He plays with wooden dinosaurs and thinks thunderstorms are dragons. What could he possibly have that you want? Cade didn't move. Didn't blink. Not what he has, he said softly. What he is. The scarred man stepped forward, enjoying her confusion. 10 years ago, Hollowstar wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a device. It was a genetic program, an experimental sequence designed to enhance cognitive mapping and instinctive threat detection. The army abandoned it publicly, but not privately. Mira felt her stomach twist. That program was never approved. The man smirked. But someone tested it anyway. He gestured at her. On you. Mira's breath froze. You're lying. Am I? He tapped the tablet again. A medical file appeared. Her name. Her military ID. A classified note. Subject unknowingly exposed to sequence H1 during Operation Winterglass. Mira staggered back. She remembered Winterglass, an extraction mission gone horribly wrong. The collapsing lab. The chemical spill. The sudden dizziness afterward. But she had been cleared. Or so she thought. Cade's voice shook. You disappeared before they could retrieve long-term data. But when your son was born, he couldn't finish. Mira's heart pounded painfully. You think Elias inherited something from me? From an experiment I didn't even know I was part of? Cade nodded. They believe he carries a dormant pattern in his neural pathways. Hollowstar wasn't just a project. It was a blueprint. And if Elias has even a fragment of it, they'll use him. Mira felt sick. He's a child. He doesn't even know what fear means yet. The scarred man shrugged. Which is why we only need a small sample. Blood. Tissue. Nothing fatal, if you cooperate. Mira lunged at him, fury breaking through her restraint. Don't touch my son. Guards seized her arms, forcing her to her knees. Her breath hitched. A wave of helplessness washed over her, not from fear for herself, but fear that Elias, innocent and soft-hearted, had been dragged into a nightmare born from her past. Cade stepped closer, kneeling so their eyes met. Mira, I never wanted this. But if you don't give them what they need, they'll take it by force. His voice cracked. And they won't care if he survives. Mira's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Why help them? Why betray us? Cade swallowed hard. Because they threatened to expose everything. My mistakes. My failures. I tried to protect you by controlling the narrative. But now, his gaze dropped. Now they want him. A loud buzz echoed through the warehouse. A door slid open. 2 guards dragged Elias in, pale, shaking, eyes red from crying. Mama. I'm scared. Something inside Mira snapped. And the part of her the world feared, the Delta Force captain buried beneath motherhood, rose like a storm preparing to break. Mira's lungs burned, fury boiling hotter than any fire she had faced on a battlefield. She lunged, shoving the guards off her with ferocity only someone trained in Delta Force could summon. The first guard hit the floor with a grunt. The second swung a rifle, but Mira caught it mid-air, twisting the barrel until it clanged against the concrete wall. Her hands were quick, precise, lethal. Calculations performed instinctively, muscles remembering motions she hadn't used in a decade. Every strike, every twist was choreographed in memory. Elias screamed from across the room. Mira's heart wrenched, but she forced herself to maintain focus. One guard moved toward him. Mira vaulted forward, kicking the man into the steel table. Sparks flew. The scarred man drew a pistol. Mira dove to the side, rolling and firing 2 precise shots that struck the weapon from his hands. Cade, kneeling near her, grabbed Elias and pulled him behind cover. "Go," he yelled. Mira nodded, eyes locked on her son. She moved like lightning, clearing a path, limbs moving faster than thought, a tornado of calculated rage. The warehouse exploded into chaos. Broken glass, sparks, the smell of gunpowder and fear mixed with Mira's adrenaline. She smashed a generator with her elbow, plunging half the room into darkness. Shadows flickered over walls like monsters in a nightmare, but she didn't falter. Every heartbeat told her Elias depended on her. Every breath reminded her why she had survived years of secret missions and betrayals. She was not just a mother. She was a warrior. Outside, engines roared. Delta Force operatives emerged from the shadows, silent, coordinated. Mira's beacon had worked. She spared only a second to recognize their leader, Commander Steele, her old teammate. A nod passed between them. Reinforcements were here. And so was the advantage. With renewed energy, Mira grabbed Elias and sprinted toward the back exit. The scarred man appeared in the doorway, pistol raised, but before he could fire, Cade intercepted, tackling him hard. The shot rang out, ricocheting off the walls. Mira pulled Elias through the exit into the night. Cold wind hit their faces. The forest embraced them. Reinforcements took the front, cutting off escape routes. Delta Force moved like a single organism, silent, precise, deadly. Mira's heart pounded in her ears as they ran through the trees. Elias clutched her hand, sobbing in relief. She looked back to see the scarred man captured, his smugness replaced with fear. Cade appeared beside her, breathing heavily. "It's over," he said. Mira shook her head, eyes scanning the dark forest. "Not for them. Not for anyone who thinks my son is just leverage. But it's over for us tonight." They reached the extraction point, an armored helicopter waiting, rotors slicing the air. Mira pulled Elias into her arms, holding him tight. Tears streamed down both their faces. "Mama," he whispered. "Are we safe now?" Mira kissed his hair, chest heaving. "Yes. Forever now," she promised. And for the first time in a decade, she allowed herself to feel the weight of fear lifting. As the helicopter rose above the treeline, Mira looked at her son, alive, trembling but safe. She had led Delta Force once, but tonight she had led a rescue that mattered more than any mission. She was not just a soldier. She was a mother who had refused to lose her child. Above the forest, the night wind carried away the echoes of danger. But in Mira's chest, the storm of past battles and motherhood had finally found peace. The helicopter cut through the night sky, rotors slicing the darkness as Mira held Elias close. His small body shivered, not from cold but from adrenaline and relief. Mira whispered softly into his hair, counting each breath, letting him know he was safe, letting herself believe it too. Behind them, Delta Force operatives secured the warehouse, taking the captured mercenaries into custody. The threat that had loomed over their lives for days, the danger that had clawed at her son's innocence, was finally neutralized. Mira exhaled, a long, trembling sigh she didn't realize she had been holding for 3 days straight. When the helicopter landed in the secure Delta Force compound, Mira stepped out carefully, still holding Elias. The night air was crisp, smelling of pine and rain-soaked earth. She glanced around, black-clad soldiers moving efficiently, lights flickering over concrete and metal. Everything was controlled, professional, and precise. And yet, Mira realized the one thing no training or mission could give her: the quiet of peace, the safety of home. For the first time in a decade, she could imagine a life beyond missions, beyond secrecy, beyond fear. Elias finally looked up at her, tears streaking his dirt-smudged face. "Mama, we're really safe?" Mira smiled, brushing his hair back. "Yes, my love. Really safe. No one can take you from me now." His small arms wrapped tightly around her neck. She let him hold her, feeling the weight of guilt, fear, and exhaustion fall away. She had promised herself she would protect him above all else, and she had kept that promise. That truth alone made every scar, every sleepless night, every memory of combat worthwhile. Cade stepped forward, giving her a nod of respect. "You did it," he said quietly. "You saved him." Mira shook her head. "We did it. All of us." She glanced at the Delta Force operatives assembling quietly in the background. Their presence had ensured that no harm came to her son, but the final decision, the final courage, had been hers. She had led, not a mission but a rescue, one that mattered more than any operation in the history of her career. Later, Mira and Elias were driven to a safe house, a modest cabin in the mountains, far from prying eyes and the shadows of past enemies. Mira prepared a simple dinner, their hands busy chopping vegetables, stirring soup, as though these small ordinary motions could stitch together their frayed nerves and broken nights. Elias laughed quietly when a carrot fell on the floor. Mira joined him, the sound of her own smile feeling foreign and miraculous. For the first time in years life was simple. Say, ordinary. And that ordinary felt like victory. Before bedtime, Mira tucked Elias into his small bed, brushing his hair back. "You're brave," she whispered. "Braver than anyone I've ever known." Elias hugged her tightly. "I have you, Mama. That's all I need." Mira kissed his forehead, holding back tears. She knew the past would never fully leave her, but tonight she could rest. She had fought, survived, and won. Not for medals, not for recognition, but for love. Outside, the mountains stood silent beneath the stars. The forest that had once hidden enemies now felt like a shield. Mira stepped onto the porch, inhaling the cool night air, letting it fill her lungs. For the first time in a lifetime, she allowed herself to feel something she hadn't dared to feel in years: hope. Delta Force could handle the world's secrets. She would handle her son. And for now that was enough.